They say the most dangerous man in the world is the one who's got nothing to lose, but that's only half the story. The man you should really fear, the one society quietly fears, isn't reckless, loud, or violent. He's calm, focused, silent. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't beg for love. He doesn't try to fit in. Why? Because he doesn't need to. He's not detached from the world because he's broken. He's detached because he's whole. This man has done something most people will never dare to do. He's turned inward. He's faced his deepest fears. He's sat in the silence most men run from their entire lives, and in doing so, he has become sovereign. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming who you truly are comes at a price. You lose your illusions, you shed your masks, and you walk away from everything and everyone that was built on your need to be liked, accepted, or needed. That kind of man, the one who doesn't need anyone, is a threat. Not to peace, but to control. Not to love, but to illusion. Not to people, but to the systems that depend on your emotional weakness. He threatens society because he cannot be sold to. He threatens relationships because he cannot be manipulated. He threatens mediocrity because he's no longer willing to live a life that isn't his. You can't shame him. You can't seduce him. You can't scare him into obedience. He doesn't follow the herd because he sees where the herd is going, into quiet desperation, masked as normalcy. He is the exception, and exceptions are dangerous to a world that depends on the rule. But how does a man become like this? How does he go from needing approval to walking in true independence? To understand that, you have to understand the hidden chains society places on every man, and the silent war happening inside you right now. Let's go deeper. You were never taught to be free. From the moment you were born, the world started wrapping you in invisible chains. Be a good boy. Don't make people uncomfortable. Don't speak too loudly. Follow the rules, get the grades, earn the praise. You were trained to depend on approval, on validation, on permission. Dependency doesn't always look like addiction or failure. Sometimes it looks like being the perfect employee. Sometimes it looks like being the nice guy everyone likes. Sometimes it looks like overachieving to earn the love you never got as a child. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to survive the social world. It's who you think you need to be so that others will accept you. But behind that mask is the real you, full of unspoken desires, suppressed anger, hidden dreams, and repressed instincts. And here's the hard truth. Most men never meet that real version of themselves. They live their entire lives acting, performing, pleasing. They think it's love when it's actually fear. They think it's ambition when it's actually guilt. They think they're free, but they're chained by expectations they never chose. Jung warned us of this when he said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why terrifying? Because to accept yourself, you must first face how much of your life has been a performance. How much of your identity was inherited, not chosen. How much of your strength has been locked away beneath your own need to be liked. Look around. How many men can be alone in silence without reaching for a distraction? How many men can stand up for what they believe in, not for attention, but because it's right? How many men can say no and mean it? Very few, because neediness is the unspoken epidemic of modern masculinity. Not physical need, emotional, psychological, existential need. The need to be told you're enough. The need to belong, even if it means losing yourself. And that's exactly what society wants. A dependent man is easy to manage, easy to market to, easy to manipulate. He will trade freedom for comfort. He will trade authenticity for approval. He will trade his soul just to be accepted. But something happens when a man stops depending, when he stops asking for permission to be himself. That's when the silent revolution begins. Let's talk about what happens when a man starts walking the path to wholeness without waiting for anyone's approval. There comes a moment in every man's life where something inside him snaps, not in rage, not in despair, but in clarity. It's not loud. It doesn't look dramatic. Sometimes it happens in a grocery store, sometimes during a late-night walk, sometimes after years of pretending everything is fine. But in that moment, he realizes something deeply unsettling. He doesn't know who he really is. He knows how to perform. He knows how to smile at the right time, how to say what people want to hear, how to survive in a world that rewards conformity, but underneath it all, he feels hollow. This is where the silent revolution begins. Carl Jung called this the beginning of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming your true self. It's not about becoming better. It's about becoming real. And here's the painful truth most people never accept. To become whole, you must first be willing to be broken. You have to break the illusion that you're the roles you've been playing. The good son, the reliable worker, the likable guy. You have to step into solitude, not as punishment, but as initiation. Because in solitude, your shadow comes out. All the parts you've repressed, ignored, or denied. Your anger, your jealousy, your fears, your hunger for meaning, your buried ambition. You meet the version of yourself that never got to speak, and most people run from this moment. They drown it in noise, in distraction, in relationships that keep them numb. Because facing your real self is terrifying. But the man who doesn't run changes everything. He begins the slow, difficult, powerful journey of integration. He stops, asking, will they like me? Will they accept this version of me? Will they stay if I show them who I really am? And instead he asks, can I live with myself if I keep hiding? Who am I when no one's watching? What do I know deep down that I've been too scared to admit? That shift, from outer validation to inner truth, is the revolution. And it's silent, because the world won't celebrate you for it. They'll mock you, misunderstand you, call you selfish or arrogant, not because you are, but because your authenticity forces them to see their own masks. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and yet, that's where power begins. Because once you've met the darkest corners of your own psyche, no one can use them against you. Once you stop needing others to tell you who you are, you become unshakable, not in ego, not in bravado, but in grounded, quiet truth. This is the man who walks without permission, the man who lives without apology, the man who doesn't need anyone, and therefore can finally connect in freedom, not fear. But what does the world do when it encounters such a man? That's what we're about to uncover. Let's look at why society is terrified of a man like this. There's a reason society doesn't want you to become this man. The moment you stop needing approval, you become unpredictable. The moment you stop seeking validation, you become ungovernable. And the moment you choose your truth over collective norms, you become a threat. Not a violent one, but a spiritual and psychological one. Because society doesn't run on individuality. It runs on compliance. It needs you to buy what they sell, not just with your money, but with your identity. The independent man breaks that. He doesn't chase trends. He doesn't pretend to care. He doesn't build his identity around fragile group labels or tribal politics. Instead, he builds himself from the inside out, grounded in self-awareness, not external opinion. Carl Jung warned us that most people live in a collective fog, where their thoughts aren't really theirs. Their desires are borrowed and their morals are inherited from the crowd. The man who steps out of that fog is dangerous. Why? Because he sees how corporations manufacture insecurity so you keep buying solutions. He sees how social systems exploit male guilt to control behavior. He sees how relationships can be based not on love, but on mutual dependency and fear of being alone. He stops playing the game, and suddenly, society can't use its usual weapons. Guilt. He's owned his flaws. Shame. He's made peace with his darkness. Fear. He's walked through it. He becomes what Jung called a whole man. Not perfect, but integrated, and that scares people who still live in pieces. even in relationships. This man is disruptive. He won't tolerate emotional manipulation. He won't stay in a situation that kills his soul just to keep the peace. He won't perform vulnerability for points or suppress his masculinity to be liked. He chooses truth over comfort, and because of that, others may call him cold. They'll say he doesn't care. But they're wrong. He cares deeply. He just doesn't compromise his core for comfort or control. He doesn't serve to be liked. He serves because he is full. He doesn't connect out of emptiness. He connects because he is already whole. In a world that profits off insecurity, the man who is internally secure is revolutionary. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, is the ultimate human task. But it's also the ultimate threat to any system that benefits from conformity. So what does the system do? It labels you. It isolates you. It pressures you to return to the collective narrative. But the truly independent man doesn't flinch, because he knows something they don't. Freedom isn't found in rebellion. It's found in self-possession. And no system, no relationship, no ideology can control a man who owns himself. But there's one more reason this man is feared. And it's not just because he won't play along. It's because he destroys illusions wherever he goes. He becomes a living mirror, and people hate what they see in that reflection. Let's explore why. There's a quiet danger that follows the man who knows himself. Not because he's trying to destroy others, but because his presence alone shatters illusions. Most people live inside comfortable lies. Lies like, if I'm nice enough, they'll love me. If I work hard enough, I'll be safe. If I sacrifice myself, I'll be worthy. But when a man stops living by these rules, when he lives from truth instead of fear, he becomes a mirror that reveals the lies others are still living by. He doesn't have to say a word. He doesn't have to preach. His existence is confrontation enough. Imagine a man who doesn't flinch when you withdraw affection, who doesn't crumble when you criticize him, who doesn't beg to stay when you threaten to leave. That kind of strength exposes weakness in others, and instead of facing their own insecurity, most people would rather attack the one who exposed it. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." That's why the self-possessed man is often misunderstood. They'll say he's arrogant, when really he's just not performing. They'll say he's selfish, when really he's finally honoring his truth. They'll say he's dangerous, because he cannot be controlled with shame, obligation, or fear. He becomes a disruptor of false systems. In relationships, he refuses codependency. In society, he resists the pressure to conform. In work, he chooses purpose over status. He doesn't try to fix everyone. He doesn't try to save the world. But the simple fact that he won't lie to himself and refuses to let others lie to him makes him a threat. He refuses to pretend love exists where it doesn't. He refuses to play along with rituals that keep people asleep. He refuses to trade authenticity for peace that isn't real. This is what makes him rare. And in that rarity, he is powerful, because when you can't be manipulated, you start to see manipulation everywhere. When you no longer seek approval, you realize how most people live just to be accepted. When you own your shadow, you start recognizing how others deny theirs. This clarity gives him an edge that few possess, but it also comes with a cost. He walks alone more often than not. He speaks truth, even when it isolates him. He chooses soul over comfort and burns bridges that once felt like home. Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And when a man awakens, he stops playing roles. He stops entertaining people who drain him. He stops sacrificing himself to be accepted by a world that never loved him in the first place. Instead, he becomes something greater than liked. He becomes real, and that realness is unbearable to those still hiding behind masks. But for the few who are ready to face themselves, he becomes a light, a living example that freedom isn't found in rebellion. It's found in radical honesty. Most people spend their lives chasing freedom outside themselves. Freedom in a better job, freedom in a perfect partner, freedom in financial success or social validation. But these are not freedom. They're just upgraded cages. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He taught that true liberation doesn't come from changing the world around you. It comes from changing your relationship to yourself. Because as long as you're looking to others to feel whole, you're not free. You're still a beggar, asking the world to complete you. The man who doesn't need anyone isn't bitter or disconnected. He's simply whole. He's tasted the emptiness of external freedom and realized that real power begins where dependency ends. He doesn't need you to like him. He doesn't need your loyalty to feel grounded. He doesn't need a tribe to validate his path. He walks his own path, even when it's unpopular, even when it's lonely, even when no one claps, because he knows something vital. The price of true freedom is the willingness to be misunderstood. People will say you've changed. They'll say you've become distant, cold, selfish. But you're not selfish. You're self-actualizing. You've stopped outsourcing your sense of identity. You've stopped living reactively. You've stopped trying to mold yourself into what others think is acceptable. This scares people, not because you're hurting them, but because they've never seen someone live without needing permission. And yet, this is where life truly begins. When you stop waiting for others to choose you, you finally choose yourself. When you stop depending on people for your peace, you discover a calm that can't be stolen. When you stop explaining yourself, you start respecting your boundaries. You become the kind of man who can walk into any room and not shrink. Not because of arrogance, but because you know who you are, and more importantly, who you are not. Jung believed the journey of individuation, of becoming your whole self, was the single most important task of every human being. Not to fit in, not to be accepted, but to become what only you can be. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. That journey isn't glamorous. It often means saying no when everyone else says yes. It means cutting ties with relationships built on fear. It means facing the parts of yourself you were taught to hate. But it also means waking up each morning free. Free from the need to perform. Free from the guilt of disappointing others. Free from the lie that your worth is conditional. This is the man who doesn't need anyone, not because he's closed off, but because he is open from the inside out. He loves by choice, not by need. He connects from overflow, not emptiness. He gives without losing himself. That is power, not control over others, but complete mastery over the one thing you can actually change, yourself. And once a man realizes that no one else holds the key to his freedom, he stops looking outside and starts building a life that reflects the truth within. So now we return to the question, why is the man who doesn't need anyone society's greatest threat? Because he is the embodiment of what everyone secretly craves but fears to become. He is not chasing, he is still. He is not empty, he is whole. He is not lost, he is rooted. In a world that thrives on chaos, confusion, and consumption, he stands quietly outside of it, not in rebellion, but in mastery. He is the healed man, not flawless, not perfect, but integrated, aware, awake, and his healing threatens the very structures that profit from brokenness. He threatens the media that feeds on insecurity. He threatens the relationships built on dependence. He threatens the systems that require obedience to survive. His existence says one loud, inconvenient truth. You do not need to be what they told you to be. That truth terrifies those who've built their entire identities on external approval. Because if one man can step out of the game and find peace, what excuse do the rest of us have? Carl Jung believed that confronting the unconscious, your shadow, your wounds, your repressed desires, is the most terrifying and transformative journey you can take. Most avoid it. They stay busy. They stay addicted. They stay distracted. But the man who chooses to sit with himself, to wrestle with his darkness, to bury the old self and resurrect the authentic self. That man becomes unshakable. And here's the final paradox. The man who doesn't need anyone is not a danger because he is cruel or careless. He is a danger because he reveals the cost of pretending. He shows you, without saying a word, that all the masks you wear are optional, that all the roles you play are just that, roles, that the prison you live in was built from your own fear of being alone with yourself. But if you're brave enough to sit in that solitude, to let go of needing to be liked, needed, or saved, you will discover something extraordinary. You are enough. You will stop chasing and start creating. You will stop needing and start choosing. You will stop shrinking and start standing. You will become the one who once terrified you, not because you are heartless, but because you finally have a heart that's whole. That's what society fears. A man who heals himself, because when he does, he begins to heal others just by being himself. He inspires other men to stop performing. He invites women to rise into their truth instead of playing roles. He challenges the status quo, not with anger, but with presence. He becomes the threat that heals. And in doing so, he gives others permission to stop surviving. And finally, start living. So if you felt that pull, to be more than what they expect, to walk away from what no longer serves you, to stand alone, even if it means standing in the dark, follow it. Because that darkness, it's not the end. It's the beginning of the man the world truly needs. One who needs no one, but chooses everything with purpose. That man is rare. That man is free. That man might just be you.